wonderful Monday morning. Yeah, Americans have the day off. Well, I have the day off too. I'm that semi-retired guy living off his savings while he looks for something really cool for a job for his next ambition. But in the meantime, I'm doing the role play stuff. Go ahead and give you guys some good quality insight here, if I can. This morning, I'm sucking on some coffee out of my Shonner cup. Oh, and where can you get your Shonner cup? Well, we will be making these soon enough. Actually, I will be making these soon enough. It'll be a larger cup than this, and it will be having the quote on the little verbal battle on the back there, which was one of the more funnier things I've ever seen Shonner do. And for those that are in the know, they know what it's all about. But if you want that cup, we're going to be making those, and all the proceeds will end up going to pay for all the, like right now we have a ton of upgrades on the Discord server for the RPG Crusade. And I'm footing the bill myself. So, I want this to be a self-sufficient kind of thing. So hopefully we can sell some Shonner cups and to help kind of alleviate some of the costs involved in having our Discord open for people to and feel free to get yourself invited in. You can always ask me, Crispy, the gang, everybody in 4D will be able to give you a link somehow or give you an invite and come on in, glean what you can from our Discord. We have a lexicon there. We explain everything, how to do 4D roleplay and how it can improve your gameplay as it currently is. We can example all these in front of you so that you can have like real, insight on how to do this. Me, I didn't have that privilege. We didn't have this resource. So now we have it out there so that people can go ahead and feel free to use what rules we do. What our rules imply is manners at the game table, not interrupting the other players as they proceed through their turn. Having an exact equation on how to perform your turn. You do your action. You also imply where you are. Your movement. So, or what you're doing. You could be just standing there, but imply what you're doing as you're standing there, gesturing with your hands, rubbing your beard. Pulling your ear, whatever it is that quirk of your character is. And what you say. And that is it. Just one action and a little bit of extra, whatever the game system entails for your turn. So that's what we imply in our game. That is the basics of how to get your turns running through really fast instead of having these slog out battles of 1 hour of gameplay and only one turn going by. That doesn't occur in 4D. You pretty much play the whole game in an hour if you really wanted to, like a good scenario, kind of like a movie kind of scenario. So very easy to perform that in a 4D game. We have a person posing some questions. He does ask the general public for their insight on this, and this is a video response to Family Tabletop Guy. So let's take a look here. I've watched this entire thing, so I've sped it up a little bit so that we can go through it again. Please watch his version of it as well. Go ahead and subscribe to him. Give him some subscription love or some likes or whatever. I'm subscribed to him because he was relatively new when he popped on. He's got a pretty good subscriber base so far. But as we well know in the YouTube world, Subscribers does not equal wisdom. So, so I mean, 4D is still kind of underground, but we are getting known more and more every day. Every day, there's more of us showing up. Our community is about 60 some odd members now, and they are a very active group in our Discord. There's always somebody talking or somebody doing some sort of a video or a game. You can feel free to join. You can get vetted. They're vetting players is an important thing in our group because we want to make sure everybody's up to par with the rules and knows how to perform them in real time, real life. So we just don't talk the talk. We walk the walk here. All right. So, questions. Players do not know what they want. Well, I have the answer to why that is, and there's some pretty nifty. There's a good piece of insight that he came upon. He had a eureka moment in his game session here as well. So that is also explained in here. So I think that's really cool. But it also leads to the clue of what is going on here and why things end up going so wrong in a role-playing game. And I think you keyed in on it, but you don't know what exactly it was that made that so awesome. But I will explain some things to you that may give you some insight on where it came from, where that awesomeness came from. All right, let's go ahead and watch this video here.
Full nature again, aside from the road over here. I've been thinking a lot about this idea of giving your players what they want. I hear a lot of dungeon masters and dungeon tubers talking about like, hey, try and figure out what your players want, or ask.
Now, keep in mind, I haven't watched any of your gameplay videos, and I don't think you have any gameplay videos uploaded. That gives you a lot of insight when you record your video and you can watch and replay back what has been happening in your game session. That way you can kind of, grind through what exactly is working and not working in your sessions. And it really helps. It's not meant to, a video is to give an idea of how you perform your game. And that's the important part of the perform of the game. Not the performance, but how the players interact with the game master and how information is relayed back and forth. I used to be, by what you're describing in a lot of your videos, I used to be exactly like you, exactly searching out what is the answer. How did I have such a good game session one time, and what was it that made it good? And what were the things that were not fun in that game? Things like that, I tried to tear apart and figure out. And that's what Shauner kind of instilled in me too. So I used to be just like everybody else, role-playing like what we call 1D, 2D. 1D being, a player that just rolls dice and waits for his chance to roll those dice and doesn't really contribute anything to the game other than being a die roller. Then we have players that, try to interact with the game master, but, are kind of basically blocked by what the game master does. But they try, and they may, toss back some quirky quotes from movies and stuff like that just to fill in the time, or be on their phone while the other players are doing their turn. And then when it comes to their turn, they're like clueless on what's happening on the turn. That sort of stuff. 3D players, everybody's just zoned in. You talk in character, stay in character during that entire session. But before the session, you can have your fun moments and stuff and talk about movies and that sort of stuff. At the end of the session, you can talk about, that stuff as well. Plus, what went good in the game, what went bad in the game, what things do you think you can work on? You can give yourself a good, dose of reality check at the end to kind of, you know, figure out what worked with everybody and what people hated in the session and stuff. And these are good things to bring up so you can improve your session over and over again. All right. And that's what we're all about in 4D is trying to figure out all those things. We've figured out a lot of things. We have a good method to role play and keep everybody in the eyes of their character and play out their character's desires and wishes. Not necessarily the player's desires and wishes, but the character's desires and wishes. Okay, because they're separate. They're totally separate. But let's continue on here.
Ask them what they want and then give them what they want, right? And I don't know. Some of it is a weird idea because I think it's backwards to tabletop RPG structure. Okay, but on top of that, it's a kind of a problem because players don't know what they want. You know, and I know that's probably, it sounds a little hot takey. It's not though. Like players don't actually know what they want.
I'll give you an answer to that.
I mean, they might know what they want when it comes to like they want to play with terrain and miniatures or maybe the system that they like playing. Yeah, those things, sure. But story-wise, I don't think players actually know what they want. Most players. I'm sure there's probably exceptions. I don't really care to discuss them, but I think an average player playing the game doesn't know what they want. And I know this from like two perspectives. My own, being an average player, and two, being a dungeon master dealing with average players. None of them have any idea what they want.
Native Instruments Summer of Sound is on right now. Contact 8 is my go-to for fast chord ideas.
Right? Like there's things I could ask them, would you like this or this in the game? And they would say, yes, they want that, and then not engage with it. And then, you know, vice versa, there'd be stuff they say they don't want that if I put into the game, they'd be totally engrossed and enmeshed with it, right? So, okay, but let's talk about the inversion of game design, right? So let's say your players say that they don't want a certain type of story being told in the game, right? Like a mystery, or they don't want to deal with, you know, scary, you know, monsters or horror elements. You know, I mean, I'm not talking about you need to ignore them and just put weird horror elements in the game. I mean, I don't know that that's actually true to the nature of storytelling, right? If your players do a thing and they go down into a dark, mysterious, scary place that should be scary because it's like the bowels of the earth or something, a place where primordial forces of nature are at work, it should probably be scary, right? Like, and if the players make the choice to go exploring primordial earth where the, you know, elemental forces of nature are at work, it can't be the back room of Starbucks. You know, it's got to be dangerous or something, right? To be real. And here's one of the other ways that I keep thinking about it. In the aspect of like trying to sense what your players want, that is, I think, the actual good advice, right? Like, and people just, I think a lot of the dungeon tubers and people fail to articulate it well. This is like an intuitive thing. Like you have to kind of, as a dungeon master, be in tuned to what your players are responding to and what they aren't. And in that case, yes, I say, you know, try to figure out what they want, but don't ask them. And then also don't betray the story, because even if what they want is a peaceful encounter in a town, if they're going around the town robbing the place or, you know, like murder hoboing, the town should respond, right? So there's two, as best I can figure it, figuring out what players want and giving them it partially is a discernment issue. It's not sweeping across the board like over-the-counter prescription thing. It's something where it's like, yeah, kind of try and figure out what they want, but then give them what the story should give them, right? And allow them to make choices in the world that have consequences on the story. So even if they want to be running this cafe or something, they can't do it by making deals with mob bosses or whatever, right? Anyways, short video. I am interested to hear your thoughts about this idea, giving players what they want. Being a player, as a player, saying, I know I'm too stupid to know what I want. I'll give you an example. Here's how stupid I am, okay? Okay, I'm in a game on Saturday nights, all right? And I'm playing this game with my son and his friend. It's just the three of us together, okay? My son is 14, his best friend is 14. His best friend's name is Landon, my son's name is Bishop, okay? So I'm playing with Bishop and Landon in a game on Saturday. And Landon was gonna be dungeon mastering it. And initially, I didn't want to play. I was like, oh.
Okay, this goes into another kind of topic, which is a little bit separate, but understandably related. But we'll tackle the first part here. So, story. Now, in 4D, as compared to the way that you are playing now, in 4D, the game master does not impose a story at all. You do not go into the game with any preconceived notions of any kind of story. You go in with a blank slate as far as that is concerned. What you do prep for, okay? What you do prep for is the motives and the plot that the NPCs will provide. Okay, so we will have like bad guys, we will have henchmen from the bad guys, we will have, you know, all the neutral kind of NPCs for the situations, monsters, all that kind of stuff. They all have motives. They all have directives of what they are to accomplish. If they are monsters, I am hungry, I eat, I search for food, whatever it is. That is their motive. That is their desire. They are going to be trying to hunt for things, yet keep themselves out of constant danger as well. But at the same time, crossing that danger threshold to see whether or not it is worth it to kill that thing for food or flee because that thing's going to end up eating them for food, right? So you know, there's those kinds of background things going on. The bad guy, he has goals. He wants to find the sword of Socrates or whatever it is, you know, and marry the virgin princess of the kingdom, and, you know, sway her to his whims and everything, sway the courts to, that's his goals. And this is not the story. This is what the goals and motivations of different characters are. So you write these down. What I do is I make NPCs. I just, you know, have a book full of ideas for NPCs. Write them down. You know, you can change the names of them later. You can change different things off of them. Give them a couple of motivations. You know, and give them maybe a movie character that you are going to imagine that NPC as. Maybe Alan Rickman or something like that. Whoever, you know, that could be a good evil bad guy, Snapey kind of, you know, character. You know, he could be, you know, perceived as good or evil depending on, you know, which side you're looking at it. You know, he wants to get his goals done. His henchmen have goals too. Maybe they are, you know, some of them may conflict with what the overlord is doing as well. So they may be swayed in the game somehow by the players eventually, you know, to join their side in the cause and stuff like that. Cool stuff like that does occur. So we're looking at it in a cinematic kind of point of view when you get into 4D. But you do not imply any story at all. But during our session 0, you'll go through a lot of, you know, okay, what are we going to do? What world are we performing in here? What are our goals for our characters? What characters are we playing? And that kind of stuff. So, you know, so you have a general idea of what the players are looking for: overland, you know, travel, exploration, or is it, you know, searching, delving through dungeons and stuff like that. Those could be just basic things that you can bring up during your session 0. Find out what the general vicinity of the characters will be when starting the game. Now, to come in and like orchestrate, you know, that the players are going to meet this guy and that guy and blah, 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 and they're going to go ahead and, you know, make a deal in order to go ahead and search out the ruins of blah, blah, blah. And no, you don't do any of that. Don't even, you know, you might come up with a couple of cool locations or something like that, you know, might have maybe, and I'm going cinematic here, maybe have about 5 rooms or something like that at the most, if you're going to do that, because the idea is you're not going to prep a lot of stuff because you don't know where those characters are going to go. You might have locations that you've, you know, designed a few rooms for and stuff, like a lair of a a cockatrice or something like that, sure, that's cool. Go ahead and write it in the book. You can reuse the location as a separate thing, and you can use the monster as a separate thing. I always have a book handy for all my for anything that I'm improving. So if you want to learn about how to make your own improv book that you will use over and over and over again and barely use it for, you don't need any prep because you have your book forever, you can watch that video. It was just about a month ago that I put that one out. So check that out. So what it comes down to, the crux of it is the players don't know what they want to do. And that's mainly because out of all these years of game mastering under game masters that imply a story, imply that you have to go through a route, imply that you need to go A, B, C, D according to my, to my list here on my notes. I've written down A, B, C, D. I haven't. No, this is how I would have done it a long time ago if I'm not 40. Is do make out a storyline that there's going to be this happening and that happening, and there's going to be a fight in this area and blah blah blah. No, you as the game master are orchestrating the story, right? In that sense, no. You don't do that anymore. The players carry the story. They are the story, not your story that you're writing up in your prep book. The players carry the story from the start of the game, from wherever it is that they are. That is what the story is about. It's just the same as you getting up in real life in the morning. You decide what you're going to do. I wake up in the morning. I just say, okay, I'm going to go have a shower. Wake myself up in the shower, shake my head, hit the towel, get myself ready. And I decide, I'm going to go downtown. I got a something from Longman McQuaid. It's on my phone, right? Oh, okay, I got it says that it's in stock at my store now, blah blah blah. So I just I'm gonna go down and go ahead and see if this piece of equipment is ready for me. So I get into my car and I start driving downtown. I'm doing all these things. This is my story. Has nothing to do with a game master telling me. The game master will be telling me what is it I see up ahead on the road and stuff like that. Okay. And as soon as I come to the intersection, well, maybe there's an overturned truck or something. And maybe zombies are filing out of this overturned truck and eating people. This is part of the story. Now I've decided what I'm going to do as my character. Because I'm playing a character, right? If we're equating my real life as me playing a character, I decide what I do. In real life, I probably run away. I want to enjoy my life with grandkids and stuff like that, so I would probably avoid the confrontation. If I was playing a heroic character, okay, which is opposite of what I would be playing in real life, well, maybe I am a heroic character in real life. You don't know. So, I am quite confrontational sometimes when it comes to something that I perceive as not correct or right. I will, call it out for what it is because I'm old. I'm 60, and I don't like bullshit. So my bullshit meter is gone out of off the deep end. So. What I play as my character versus what I would as me, two totally different things. So you shouldn't be asking what your players want to do. I mean, it should be what the characters want to do. But that's up to the players. That's up to the players, not you as the game master. That's up to the players. Okay. Part of our manners is, GMs don't ask questions of the players. They don't move the players. They don't rewrite the actions of the players, like as a end of the turn, recital of everything that's happening. These are all things that Matt Mercer would do, and that's the reason why his turns are an hour long instead of 5 minutes. Because if you have a turn going around with a number of people and it's taking longer than 10 minutes, something's wrong. Something is severely wrong. So if the GMs are not allowed to ask questions, move the characters, rewrite the actions, who does the actions? Who does move the character? Who does ask questions through their actions? That would be the players' characters. So the players would play their characters. If they want to know if a door is locked or unlocked, they don't ask an invisible presence in their area. If you're looking at this as a movie, you never see any of these characters in Aliens going, is that door locked? They may ask another character if the door is locked, if they may know. Sure. That's fine. That's logical. But to ask the invisible talking head narrator whether or not this is a possibility or not, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to just approach the door and check the handle. So I would say I approach the door and check the handle to see if it's locked. Easy. That brings up your answer to your question through the game master. The game master implies whether or not they have to be reactionary instead of being prompting, pushing players to do certain things. You only bring in a push by bringing in NPCs, monsters, that sort of thing, in order to create some sort of tension in what's happening. The door may be opening, but there's also a big, cluster of aliens coming up from behind you, eating away at your squad mates in the meantime as they're blasting away. So that's creating this tension. Get that door open. If you check that door and it's locked, well, it's going to be very tension motivated to get that door open before all your squad mates get killed by a swarm of aliens coming in, right? So, these are things that occur in the game. You may not, I don't go through life in real life expecting, to make a clean sweep going from my house to Long and McQuaid. There could be different things that occur. I could get sideswiped, which is quite an easy proposition to get yourself into in Grand Prairie, Alberta, because everybody drives so terrible around here. I'm not originally from here. I'm from BC, so I can say I don't feel that I've collected enough, Alberta bad driving, things, or whatever you may call it, like actions bad actions that Alberta drivers would do normally on the road, cut each other off and that sort of stuff. So there are good drivers out there too. So it's not always all bad. But as a player of my avatar, this guy here, the real life one, I don't know what's going to be popping up in front of me, and how I react is how the character would react, not me as a player. So I might be scared of spiders if I was a real person. I'm not. I thoroughly enjoy spiders. I let them crawl on my hands. I just freak out my wife all the time, and have no problem with that. But maybe my character in the story is scared of spiders, so I would play the character not as me, but as as the character. So there is a separation between what the character wants and what the player wants. Okay, it's two different things, and sometimes we don't know what our character will want until it's put in front of them, because maybe you haven't dwelled on whether or not your character has considered maybe a romantic kind of option with an NPC or something like that. You never thought that would occur, but maybe it develops into that kind of thing with an NPC. You don't know, and that's what's some of the cool things about these characters is you don't know what the result is going to be until you're faced with it, and then you make that decision. Okay, so the reason why we lost it as players, this idea of knowing what we want in a game and stuff, is because a lot of times the game master will oversee. It's the game master's story, not my character's story. It's so a lot of players have been conditioned to not even consider what the role play of their character would bring in fruition in each situation. So if I was playing my character Valgar Bloodflight, Warrior of Chaos and other breakfast cereals, he would be a madman, because he's cursed by the amulet that he has over his neck, and so he drinks a lot and gets into trouble at the bars and stuff, and that's not how I would be as a character. I hardly drink ever. I hardly ever do. I'll have maybe a drink maybe once a month myself, or maybe twice a month if I'm lucky. I have lots of bottles of booze stacked up on my shelves, but I hardly imbibe on drinking. I only do it once in a while. Even at a bar, I'll maybe have a beer, and that is it. Like a draft or something. That would be it. But as far as that character is concerned, because of his inflictions and stuff like that through the game, yeah, he's got an insanity that he has in the game, and it makes it interesting. It's an interesting, interactive being that character, because during that time I'm in character and I'm talking as that character and reacting as that character. So. And I'm not quite sure what I would do, because I am not a drunkard. I am not a person that has been possessed by an amulet, and with a flaming sword and boots of levitation and a ring of feather falling. You can imagine what kind of shenanigans I could get into as Valgar Bloodflight. And, from his loot that he's acquired through the years, I could do a lot of crazy things, running away from the law in certain circumstances in the game, and, make interesting things happen just by me, utilizing my, the things that I have on me, flaming a house along the way. And running up a castle wall and jumping off of it and landing softly, to the ground below, and keep on going, confounding my pursuers, the law or whatever. It's stuff that I would not do in real life. So we have to get that straight, that there's two different things going on: what the player wants and what the character wants. So I hope you can understand that. And a lot of this understanding what the character wants has been pulled out of role-playing games lately, and it's just been basically a GM-driven storyline. Okay? So if you can bring back all those options that the players have, as they would perceive them in a kind of real-life cinematic, semi-realistic situation, there's a lot of things that you're missing in your game that you can feel like, how am I missing this? How am I am I not? If you don't understand it, you could be confounded on how this is missing in your game, how these things are not, why you don't know what you want anymore, But once you understand what the rules are of each of the participants in the game and the rules and the manners implied to them in order to help that, then you end up with a better situation, which you find out in this next part here. So we'll bring this up. Now we'll bring up your next point here. And this was, you were getting in together with a game with your son and his friend and thinking, this could be a bad idea. So let's go to this.
Man, it's going to be the worst playing with a 14-year-old. It's going to be so bad. Because it's first time dungeon mastering, right? He's a first time dungeon master. There's no way this is going to be good, right? I'm going to be backseat DMing the whole time. We start the game up, and I just went, I'm going to lean in. I'm going to try and play as best I can. I'm just going to try and be the most grounded character in this world and play out this wizard, intelligently.
Good.
And we started playing, and after the first session, I was like, yeah, that was pretty good. That was pretty good. My son was playing, my son was having a hard time leaning in because he thought he didn't want to be playing also. And I just in character, I engaged his character, got him to play with me. He played with me.
Good.
Landon did an excellent job DMing. The second session, I still had that worry, that hesitation, maybe it's going to be bad. He's a 14-year-old. This is how dumb I am. I'd already played one session and it went really well. Second session, I'm like, all right, kind of same thing. Second session goes amazing as well. Right? It's so good. And I was like, wow, he's really a good dungeon master. What was I worried about? Right? I don't actually know what I want. Third session, now I'm past the point of convincing myself I don't want to play. And I'm just leaning in going I'm excited to get into this game. We're about to go fight this monster and we might die. Anyways, it went great. I realized I have no idea what I want from a dungeon master. And I'm generally fairly trying to be discerning about things I want from games. But I'm still too stupid to recognize what I want from a game. And what I wanted was to have a really good game with my son.
That's right.
Right? I didn't realize how much I really wanted to have a great game with my son, where I got to play as a character, invested with his character. I've wanted this for a couple years.
Okay, so the idea was no longer winning. It's no longer winning. It's no longer collecting XP. It's no longer about the mechanics and stuff like that. It is the interaction between your character, not you, your character, and your son's character, okay? And the interactions between them make interesting things happen. It's like Vasquez and Hicks and Hudson and off of Aliens, and their dynamic on how they played their characters in that scenario and everything. And Aliens, you're watching it for the drama between the characters, all the little hassling things that, all the little jabs that they do to each other and stuff. You can tell that they got a camaraderie between the characters somewhat, and they jabber at each other every once in a while in order to get the best out of each other's character, right? Out of each other's personality, And that's the interesting thing about Aliens. It's not about, these aliens coming in and attacking. I mean, they're cool looking and everything, but it is the interaction between the characters that make the cool dynamic. And some of the characters will fight against each other too. So you'll have player versus player kind of, interactions where it's not, necessarily violence, but it is ideologies are being, displayed here from one side and the other, and they're conflicting, and that makes the thing interesting. And the way you play the characters, in those situations, amongst also having, aliens piling up on top of you from the doorstep, it makes it even more of an intriguing situation. And that is the thing that you should be realizing here is it's not, the goals of the game are changed in order to have that fun. The goals are to have good intercharacter interactions in a scenario which is implied and you don't know what that scenario is going to be because that's the way real life is. I don't know that there's going to be a truck turning over on my way to Long McQuaid. Who knows? It could be UFOs coming overhead and sucking people up, from the highway along the way there or something. I don't know, and that's the thing is like you shouldn't. Your characters shouldn't know what's coming up. And that's what makes it interesting is spontaneity of what this is. A dragon comes down. Everybody's gonna be running. Does your character stand its ground? Even though he might be a weakling compared to this thing. It's up to you to decide on how that character is going to react. But you never have a preconceived notion of how this would play out until it does happen. So, that's the thing, and that's the cool part about role-playing games in general. Is these unknowns come into the situation and make it even more either harder to get the result of what you want for your character's goal, or it might make it easier. Maybe you want to have all the gold at the end of the game, because you're a greedy thief and everything. Maybe you want the players to be bled off and die, one by one as you reach the climactic, treasure trove that you are looking for, and then say, as you're trying to, everybody's been, killed off and you're the last one, you're trying to figure out the final trap and you get yourself killed. It still makes a very interesting story, because it's the emergent story that results from the characters interacting with everyone in whatever scenario that you've been placed in. So, what I'll do is I'll give you a kind of a brief of what you should key in on here. So players don't know what they want. Player versus character objectives and goals. So you realize that they are separate. Story is not a GM domain, but NPC plot is. Okay, so when you design your scenarios or whatever it is that you're putting together with the game session, okay, what you do is you make your NPCs, you decide on what their plots are going to be. They may have different goals and desires, and they will change. They will change how they achieve these goals, as things happen. Because the players will put monkey wrenches into things. NPCs will put monkey wrenches into things by, having the players' characters do different things as well. It could be good, could be bad, depending on which NPCs this involves in and how it changes their stance in something. It could be a change in how they perceive things suddenly, or they could be more motivated to achieve their goal and might amp up things a little bit. So it's however you perceive that character NPC is going to be changing the entire dynamic of what's happening. Might be more attacks, more henchmen showing up, more interesting things might happen because the players have intervened or changed things in the game with some of the NPCs that were neutral. Maybe they'd be more pro what the players want, maybe or what the players' characters want. They may become more against what the characters want to achieve, so it depends on what's been said, what's been done, and that has to be played out in order to see how that worked, how it becomes logical why that happened. If you skip all this kind of stuff, the interactions between characters, then there's no you dissolve some of the cool links that can be perceived in this game, such as you and your son's characters interchanging ideas with each other and becoming closer and closer. So, these are the dynamic things that you have to keep in mind in your session. story is what the players do in the game. And the GM can do pushes to add tension. Okay, so bringing in extra opponents, a trap, something creating some sort of tension, time. The trap is being something's being lowered to a big stone coming down to crush everybody slowly. Quick, we only have like 3 rounds before we die, or whatever it is that. 3 minutes before we die, that's creates a tension. Character to character interactions, developing personal interactions. Yeah, that's a huge part of it that keeps on being missed in games because the game master just wants to, answer it all with a one roll. No, don't do that. Make the interaction priority over the role. Once you have an idea of what the interaction is between the character and the NPC, then make a roll. If you wish to, if you want to gamify it a little more. A lot of times I will go with whatever's the by looking at the character's stats and everything, I will know if he's higher in certain things than the opposition is. And it's more of a natural feel that, this character would be, a little bit more influential over this character. So the results would be probably more in favor of side A than side B, just by looking at the stats, okay? And a lot of that becomes matter-of-factly. Then you don't have to use so many rolls if you want to pull that away and rely more on the role play. But you can also use the role play as the pluses and minuses. Your character may come up with a good thing that might sway what the bad guy thinks, but you don't know unless it's played out. So play it out. Stop using the roll as the result. Start using the play out as the modifier for that roll if you're going to make it a roll, okay? So, yeah, we don't have any story as far as 4D is concerned. Don't ever go in with an idea of a story. Go in with plots developed by the motivations of your NPCs, okay? The bad guys, whatever, and monsters. Monsters also have those as well. And, just write little notes beside each of your NPCs, this is the character I'm playing when I'm embodying this NPC, and these are his goals. Everything that you need to about that character. Write down a couple of the weapons that he has, or aids that he may have to help him in his goals at the time. All that kind of stuff you would have written down on your NPC stat block, and just to make your session a little bit easier to run for the sake of improv, right? So the NPCs have personal plus illusionary goals. So the NPCs have personal, have personal goals and illusionary goals. Okay, so this so this is where a NPC puts on a facade of what he is representing. Okay, and if you see through his facade, you uncover his real goal, right? So there are illusionary, masks that you can put on NPCs that they let other characters perceive them in the public. Okay, just like politicians, you'll get politicians out there that have this mask. I'm a good charismatic guy, and I'm the guy that's going to work for you. But in reality, he's canoodling around the background laws and everything in order to make other people achieve their goals than, helping the low man on the pole. So these are things that your characters will uncover, and that will be the interesting thing is these interactions and discovering and revealing what's actually going on here. So we don't have any exposition going on. We don't have any of this is forcing the characters into a storyline, because it's going to happen with whatever's happening from turn one on, basically, in your session. So some of the changes that we came up is basically player rules of manners, GM rules of manners, and session 0 goal refinement as well. So in the session 0, we talk a lot about how we want the game to be like. So you may have a movie idea of what's occurring. So it may be comedic, it may be more serious, it may be horror, it may be, maybe it's an anime. So then you're playing in an anime style. The characters are usually a little bit more exaggerated in anime. And these are different things that you talk about in the session 0, how this session wants to be played out, not what the story is, but you can also inject what things you want to see, in this game. Maybe there's dragons. You want to have dragons in this game, Okay, cool. We'll have dragons in this game. Oh, we want to have lizardmen in this game. Okay, we'll have lizardmen in this game. You guys decide all those things then as well too. That's fine. You could be starting with an actual book kind of campaign. So all that information is in there, or you can make that stuff, make the lore up right all of a sudden there and start playing it out. We have many examples of this in real time for you to watch on our videos, on our live plays. Okay. Now keep in mind, you might look at our live play and go, 4 hours, but keep in mind there's only about maybe an hour and a half of the actual game, and the rest of it is basically the fun the fun afterwards is talking about the game and sussing out what happened and everything, and talking to each other out of character at the end of the session, and talking about what we enjoyed in it, what we thought could have been an improvement and stuff like that, bringing up game decisions that were implied in the game that maybe we could improve later, that sort of stuff. So, if you're going to do any kind of GM backseat GMing, that occurs in that section of the end of the game. You don't do it during the game. It's disruptive. So our rules are implied. It's your turn. You get to hold the talking stick or whatever. It's kind of that analogy. You don't have to have a talking stick, but it should be played out like that. Whoever's the character that is in that has the turn, implies his action, where he's standing or where he moves to, and what he says. Okay? That's basically it. And if there's any NPCs or other players that have a reaction to that, well, that comes up either spontaneously, okay? So a player can respond to an active player if that is what is being done. So if a player character says, Johan, what do you perceive of the door up ahead? Is there any traps? Okay. Well, the character, Johan, can reply quickly to what is being said, and can be, it can be pushed that will be the next character in action if that is what you decided, or that player that plays Johan will have to wait until his character's turn in order to proceed to go ahead and do what is needed to be done. A lot of other player characters that may be in between, from your character's turn to Johan's. It might be a couple of player characters in the middle of like as in order of initiative, if you're working that way. We'll either cede their turn in order to have the thief come in and do his thing in order for their turn to, so you can have players ceding their turn in order to have a thing flow through naturally. Okay, so that's acceptable. You talk about those kinds of things in session 0, what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do during a specific player's turn. So it should be no interruptions on that character's turn until he goes ahead and, you know, takes the talking stick or whatever to the next player, and then they play out their turn. So, and while you're listening to the other characters do their turn, you stay silent. You don't interject or anything like that. That's a no-no in our game. So, unless you have been addressed during that character's turn in order to provide a response or something like that, then, you know, we just keep things rolling. So it's very fast. It's, you know, it stops all this out of character talk and stuff like that can go ahead and fill up that time. I'm 60 years old, so I only have about 700 hours left of game time if I'm counting, like, you know, 3 hours per weekend every second weekend. Okay. And, you know, you add it up another 20 years. So then I'm 80, I'm going to have about 700 hours worth of game time. So I want to make sure that 700 hours that I have remaining in my life is going to be the best role play that I can possibly have. So I don't want to have these 8 hours of only performing one turn. I want to have, yeah, you know, if we're going to play 8 hours, it better be like a full on, you know, Lord of the Rings thing happening, you know, during that session. There better be that occurring where it's being played out and there's a conclusion. Normally our sessions in 4D are about an hour and a half. Longest I've gone is 3 hours. Okay. And that was with quite a few characters in different areas of a space station or on different planets. And this was all being played out. You can watch all these videos. I have them here. Keep in mind, I do have videos on here where I do play like the old style 1D, 2D style, which is what everybody seems to be playing, you know, just basically running through railroads and following the Game Master's story. And, you know, the players have hardly any interaction with that, except for a perceived interaction that they think is making a difference. In 4D, the players are the reactionary force in this whole thing on what's happening, and you as a game master react to what is being brought upon by the players' characters. So it's a different dynamic. It's where the game master steps away from a lot of the things that you would normally see. You'd have to watch it and observe what is occurring in real time so you understand. Because back in the day when I first started doing this, I was nobody told me how this worked. I had to get into a game session to figure it out with a guy that could actually GM in that style. And I was like, everything came, you know, together. And then I had to try to unwind myself of the control, okay, as a game master, in order for me to perform it as well. So it did take a little bit of time because I only had a few exemplars of what was happening. And, you know, now, today, you have so many 4D games going on now that are exampled online that you can actually see what's happening and you can ask questions and you'll get answers from us. Not like some other, you know, people out there that will say, oh, our games run perfectly, but they don't show any of their game as an example. Or, you know, they just do after action results. Just a rundown of what happened during the game, which is doesn't help anybody at all. Sure, you tell the story of what happened, but it's not showing you how the happened. And a lot of it is, 8 hours of doldrums, waiting for your turn, not getting anything done. And by the time 8 hours is done, you've only done 4 to 8 turns. And you're like, what did we do? Like, I can't play that way anymore. Sorry. It has to be, it's got to be faster. It's got to be pretty close to, kind of the movie tempo, of the game's got to, the cinematic tempo has got to be there. So, for me to be interested in it anymore. But the reasons for me wanting that interest is because the character to character interactions that you're going to have, because everything's through the eyes of your character all the time during that session, while the session's in session. And then when you're out of it, you pull yourself out and you're like, wow, that was an awesome, interaction. We had so many, conflicts between characters and stuff. It was really cool, seeing, how Vasquez jabs, Hudson, and how Hudson reacts, to the aliens. You can talk about that at the end of the sessions on how your characters reacted to things and laugh about it and enjoy the movie references that you can bring up back during that time instead of bringing it up during the game session, after you talk about that, oh, this was just like a alien session and filling up 15 minutes of your session time with that. No, do it at the end, because session is going to be the priority here. And with 4D, all the players are talking and looking at each other and listening. Listening is very important in a role-playing game. So, because everybody in our games, we don't have maps or minis or anything. What is being perceived in the characters, the players' minds, is how the map is. So by the expressions of the explanation of the vicinity by the game master as a narrator, telling you what's around you, or showing you a picture if that's the case. If it's a picture, will tell you a lot more than how you can verbalize it, and we'll cut down on that as well. So you got a lot of AI stuff out there that can help you with that as well. We could bring up a picture if you want. But how you run the session, and what the roles of each the characters, the player characters, and the game master is severely important, and how they run their game is important as well. So, what I say, don't worry about what your players what the players want. It's what the characters want to do in those situations. Okay. So, and that will be at a scenario by scenario basis. And even then, those characters, the characters are also learning about themselves too, about their tolerances and stuff like that. Because every situation you come up, you can't, in real life, you don't know what you're going to react if a driver cuts you off, right? Are you going to be the road rager, or are you going to be the meh? It's what it is. Maybe you just throw up a sign at them, in order to tell the driver of that car that you weren't too pleased with them, or you might lay on the horn or something like that. It's what your character would do, and you don't know what that is until it happens, right? So, keeping your mind through the eyes of the character really does help in staying in character mode. So, I don't know if that will, bring up any insight for you, but you can always ask questions. You can join our Discord forum for free. There's no cost at all. If I hear that somebody's, making money off of what we're doing. No, that's a no go. Don't do that. We're trying to do this so that people can have access to our information for free, and they can freely join our Discord, learn what they can. And if they want to leave the Discord, that's totally cool. And they could spread the what they've learned from us. That is awesome. And carry on in their own ways. There's a lot of availability of games on our Discord as well. We do have several games displayed out there that you can join or you can ask questions about in order to join. That sort of stuff. There's people that aren't even using our Discord to conduct games. They're doing their own games, off the board. That's cool too. As long as we get the word out about 4D as a game style, the more people that get into it, the better, because it's more brain exercise for your head. You'll have a better experience, in character than you would looking from, up above, third person, like you are in a Baldur's Gate game or something like that, because you feel disembodied, when you're looking at a map. In character through your eyes, I feel is the best way. But if you're still running things with miniatures and maps, the best thing you could do is imply the manners in order to make your turns go faster. Okay? And that means, no more players interrupting each other and no more asking the game master silly questions, because the game master isn't actually in the game. He's just a describer of things in front of characters. So ask for more clarification through your action. You learn how to do that instead of asking, is it locked? The rest of the player characters look at that character and go, "Who are you asking?" Or quit talking to the air. It's you're in character. If you want to know if that door is locked, walk up to it and say that you are walking up to it. I walk up to the door and try the door handle, instead of asking in the open air, "Is it locked? Does it have a trap in front of it? Does it do this? Does it do that?" Instead of trying, to do it. That's how normal real life works, is you try by doing different things. You don't ask the air, is it locked? Is it this? Is it that? Because you're not going to get any answer back, Do these headsets work? You only know by by listening yourself to see whether or not this stuff is being recorded, right? Or you could ask your audience if you're in a live stream, "Hey, you guys hearing everything okay?" Right? You have to do the things in order to see if it works or not. And of course, there's going to be implications on the actions that you take. You may reach for that door handle, but on that note, your game master could say, a click occurs below your foot in front of the door. So now you're kind of, "Oh, did I, start a trap or something?" You could have said something differently. I observed the floor before I reached the door to grab the handle. Now you have a chance to go ahead and make a roll for your, find traps or something like that. Game master has to listen to what you're saying, in order to bring up those prompts, those rolling prompts. So it's a lot of listening to each other in order to get 4D to work flawlessly. Okay, so it takes a lot of work between players and the GM in order to make 4D to work. But the benefits of it becomes a more enriching, engrossing scenario of which you could die very easily, but when you get through it, it is an awesome thing. And if you die awesomely. It's the way it goes. So just keep that in mind. That's not the in our games, the goal isn't to live all the way through it. It's just to perform the scenario as your character. So if your character dies in that scenario, he dies. But at least you have a cool interaction and everything with the characters that you had at the time, and you've given insight and clarity into the scenario, into the story that emerges from it, that you can talk about it at the end of the session. I've died in many sessions, and a lot of times it's because of things that I brought into the session, because we use co-creation as well, co-creation rules. So players can imply different things in the game as well, which may affect your characters. And sometimes we imply negative effects that the GM may not have thought about. Oh, I get hit in the leg. I'm going to be walking slower, so my character walks slower in the game, and I play that out in the game. I don't play out, if I suddenly lost my arm, I'm not going to be like, oh, I lost my arm, I keep on fighting. I'm going to be like, blood squirts everywhere as I shoot around, as I scream, oh my God, I lost my arm, and I if I was the character, I would pull myself out of the battle as quickly as possible in order to staunch the profuse bleeding out of my arteries before I bleed out and die. That would be what would naturally occur. You don't play your character out as if, oh, I have a big pool of hit points, I'll just keep on bashing and banging and everything. And sure, you could still do that, but you'll be bleeding out a certain amount of hit points every round easily as you start going flush and losing your consciousness due to blood loss. That's what's going to occur. Plus, the area is going to get very slippery pretty quick with all that blood everywhere and et cetera, et cetera. So you have to play out your character as if what's happening is happening, and it's up to you as the player to play that out properly. If you're not playing that out properly, well, you'll hear about that at the end of the session. It'll be you made us groan through that. You should have been, if you're in that situation, you wouldn't be doing that in reality. You have to understand that you have a responsibility to play your character properly as well. So this is where the vetting comes in. You want to play with good players that will embrace whatever contingencies that have occurred upon them and play them out as if that's happening to them, not brushing it aside because that's what my character would do, because you're playing through the brain of your as the player instead of the character. So keep in mind, there's a lot of that in 4D that we eliminate a lot of these metagaming things that come up as well. I hope that helps you in some form. Feel free, Family Tabletop, to join our Discord to ask questions and stuff like that. You can personally ask me questions all the time. That's no problem. I'm available to go ahead and do a response, or even come online and do a live stream with people as well. Just let me know. My email is in the description, and there's other ways to contact me. They're there on my intro videos. So that's all I really have to say about this whole thing. So players, of course, players don't know what they want. They may have an idea of what kind of, campaign they want to get into, what kind, if they want overland or, underground, or if it's sci-fi, we're going to be, planet exploring. We're going to be traders, on a starship. We're going to be this. They implied the initial ideas for the scenario, but the game master comes up with plots that the NPCs have in the vicinity, in the area, in the region, which may entangle the players. And it's up to the players to decide if they want to interact with that. It's up to me on my way to Long McQuay to interact with the overturned truck. It's up to me to interact with the road rage driver that's trying to run me off the road along the way there. It's up to me to decide if I want to stop at the stoplight or proceed through, in order to incur possibly a police, intervention. And then how you portray that police intervention. Maybe it goes all really wrong then, and stuff like that. It's whatever happens, and how your character reacts to it. The story emerges from just saying what your actions are, and it will occur. It's not a forced story. It's actions and reactions. So that's where the story comes from, not from a pre-designed plot line that they're gonna meet at the a grouping in front of the king and blah blah blah, and then they're gonna be on this road journey to XYZ. In order to get to Z, they have to go to X and then to Y and then to Z. No, you don't do that. Sure, they could end up being at the court of the king, but it's up to the players to get to the court of the king. If that's the case, it's up to the players to listen to whatever lore is going around them. Whatever people are talking about. Oh, I heard that there was giant chickens on the on the farmstead of John Watson's, and it's been a horrible situation. The chickens are eating the pigs. Blah blah blah. Players, their characters decide whether or not they're going to interact with that or not. They could just leave that for whatever. That's cool, but you shouldn't force any of this stuff. You should, lead that NPCs are talking about this kind of thing, certainly. But, leave the characters to decide on their own fate on each situation. Them ignoring this situation could get worse and worse, and suddenly there's a war on the frontier against these giant chickens reproducing, and the king is adamant of getting the men put together. Then he gets men put together and sends them out, and that could be occurring in the background while the players are figuring out how they're going to go ahead and maybe they decide that they're going to just rob the king or something like that. Well, that's a cool scenario. Well, play that out. While this is happening, the king is sending out men to go ahead and take care of this chicken. The players could, as their characters, could do something nefarious. That's a scenario. That's cool. Okay, that's what's happening then, and then you just go through whatever happens at the king's, at his castle and everything. If you have your book, a book for improv, you'll have a list for a castle. It'll list out, all the parts of the castle, so you're not tongue-tied when you're doing the improv. And, you'll have some NPCs that you can throw out because you've worked on a few NPCs that you can bring up for some interesting action on your prep time, because all my prep is basically NPC. It's NPCs is my prep. That's it. You don't have to. I already have locations and stuff. Different ideas for locations already written down from previous iterations of games that I've had, and my book on improv will help me with that. So once again, check out the video on how to make your own improv book, because it will help you forever and ever and ever and ever. And you will keep that book and maybe pass it down to your kids, saying, "Hey, make one of these yourselves, or take Dad's example and make your own book. You'll live with it forever, and it will help you always. And it costs you nothing. It costs you to purchase an empty book, empty journal." And it costs you the time to write stuff down in it, But once it's written down there, you don't have to rewrite it, or you can add more ideas. You might come up with more ideas, a month, into gaming. Oh yeah, we could, some other ideas of some forest regions and stuff. You might watch a documentary on something. Oh, those are cool. I'm gonna write those down in the game. In your notes for a potential game. The stalagmites, the stalactites. Make them super huge. And maybe there's cities built on them and stuff like that. Cool. You're coming up with ideas spontaneously just by looking at giant stalactites, giant stalagmites, whatever, and run with it, make cool locations just by, a certain words in your book, that you have there. It's fantastic. Improv is easy then, just know what your NPCs, the NPCs are important because they're the interactionaries between the game master and your players. And the players are also doing this interactionary kind of thing. Just sit back and enjoy it. Watch it. Let it roll on. Bring in action when it's needed. Bring in the push. Suddenly the goblins start dropping from the ceilings and start murdering the NPCs in your player party, right? Stuff like that, you start making things happen, and suddenly it's a game of survival or whatever, it's to impede the exploration of what you're exploring at the time. Just go with it, be spontaneous, enjoy, and enjoy the interactions between the characters. That's the whole thing. That's the whole experience for me, is interaction with characters and how the scenario plays out. It's cool. You'll have a movie performed before you, basically, and enjoy it for what it is. Anyways, that's all I can say. People out there, Family Tabletop, go ahead and subscribe to them, give them a thumbs up, or give them some of your insight as well. So he may have questions later on. That's cool. I am open to answering any questions and stuff like that. And as we're sitting like an hour and 23 minutes in now, I think I've said enough. But hopefully this gives you some sort of things to maybe grasp on. But if I'm saying something that you need clarification, definitely drop something in the comment section. That's everyone. It doesn't have to be Family Tabletop guy. If you have questions on this, how do you do that? Well, I'll explain. I'll go ahead and do a video. I'll give you an example of it. I'll get one of my 4D players to play a character while I play as a game master in that exact scenario that you're pitching. And how do you do that? Sure, it's easy for us to show you because we've done it so many times and exampled it. Watch our videos, our live plays. Watch my live plays on how I used to play, and then watch the 4D stuff that I do nowadays, and you'll see a big difference in how the game proceeds. And it took me a long time to figure things out. But I had a lot of help with others, in our community, and together we ended up, refining this to a point where it is a style on its own. So, it may appeal to you, it may not appeal to you. But if there are things in there that, if you're feeling that your game sessions are too slow, we may help in making them a little bit faster, for sure. Well, a lot faster. In our case, it's an extreme difference as far as we're concerned. From how we played before to how we play now. That's all I can say. So, if any more interaction, please be free to go ahead and interact with me down below in the comment section. And everybody, take care. Thanks again for all of those that are in 4D and providing such an awesome environment for all of us. And it's cool to see everybody that's putting out 4D material out there as well, so we can get more people interested into it and realizing what we do. Anyways, catch you guys later and have a good night.